Now, I have a question for you. Are you ready to go on a safari into the heart of God? Yes. All right, well, I am too. I'm going to put on my safari hat. I'm ready. All right, before we go, I just want to ask you a question. Did you know that we all know a little Swahili? Did you know that? I didn't know that until I got ready for this. But what is the only English word that comes directly from Swahili that we all use? Does anyone know? The word is safari. Safari means to travel in Swahili, okay? Now, for all of you younger people, and actually all of us, how many of you have seen The Lion King? The Lion King, I didn't know this, was based in Kenya. So there are some terms in The Lion King that we already know some Swahili again. So how do you say lion in Swahili? Simba. How about that? How do you say friend in Swahili? Rafiki. And of course, I think everyone knows this. How do you say no worries? Hakuna Matata. All right. So you see, we're all ready. We're already prepared to go on this virtual mission trip. Now, I'm going to now invite our mission partners to come forward. Our mission partners, they'll give a brief introduction to themselves, their families, their ministries. Let's welcome Marta Bennett.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us on this safari to Kenya to learn more about what God is doing there. I first went to Kenya in 1993 to do some of my studies, doctoral studies, and then moved there a year later in 1994. So basically it's been 30 years. And it was only when COVID hit and I happened to be on this side of the world and the world shut down that I've been now more back and forth because everything went virtual. So I'm still very much in Kenya, but sometimes here and sometimes there. So I first went as a volunteer professor to teach graduate studies, especially in leadership, leading change, leadership development, organizational development, and to serve as dean, first at Daystar University, and then in 2006 I switched to International Leadership University, which used to be Nairobi International School of Theology, to head their leadership studies there. But I must note that teaching and mentoring of students is not only in the university classroom. It's life on life and over tea each day that we gather around. We've sometimes take our courses to the people. I've taught a master's course in the heart of Kibera, one of the largest slums in Nairobi. I would drive in as far as I could, walk over the railroad track and down through the maze of houses, get to that green gate metal gate in the wall, open it, part the laundry, and go through and into a classroom with 8 master's students who lived in Kibera, in the slum, who were qualified and were leading urban transformational ministries. And we studied leadership. Okay, this is our school teaching. The next slide. This is at another large informal slum settlement, Kawangware, where we took the trainings to the people. This was a pastor's training. As for teaching, it's about content, it's about skills, but it's even more so what happens between us and in the relationships and discussions. One student, graduation was this past November, and I was there, and one student, Mike Jaguna, stopped me in the hall and said, I know I've taken a long time to get through this program, but I just want you to know, it has changed my life. He says, and almost everything we do in class, within a week, God brings up a situation where I thought, we just were talking about that, and could apply. And then when COVID hit, we went completely online, and so for the last several years, those courses have been online. And one student, Susan Kibi, Kenyan, a business person, decided she wanted to go more. She wanted to grow and came, and I taught her in several courses. And so in November, I met her for the first time in person, and she came up to me and said, "You're so short." I didn't know. And I said, "You're so tall." Zoom, isn't it? But then before we had met, and she said, "I'm looking forward to meeting you in person." She sent me this message, and I share it not to point to me, but to say this is what's happening. And she just said, "I am overjoyed as I look forward to the forthcoming graduation. It's been a journey. As I reflect on my academic journey, I want you to know that you are part of my story. It's for this reason I'm writing to say in all caps, big thank you. Prof, one thing you may not know is that you were not only my lecturer, but your life. You as a person served as a role model to me. Just looking at you motivated me that even as a woman, I can make it. I can do this. I lack enough words to express my gratitude. Let's trust that all will be well, and pray with me that God will provide for me so that I may start my PhD program." We've hired her as a lecturer. She's already started teaching undergraduate, and she's also volunteered as a recruitment officer and is doing some amazing things. Well, let me tell you two stories about how God has been at work. One is, I'd love to share and introduce you to two young gentlemen. Here in this country, we're working on issues of racism. In Kenya and many African countries, the issue is tribalism and the clashes between people. Same human sin. On the right is Deng Dominic Machar. He is a Dinka gentleman from South Sudan. Deng was one of the lost boys of Sudan. You may have heard about him when in the tribal conflicts as well as the north-south conflicts in Sudan, now South Sudan. He got separated from family, and these boys found each other, trekked, safaried across South Sudan, ended up in northern Kenya in Kakuma refugee camp, eventually came to the States, was taken in by a family who helped him do high school, learn English and high school and college. And then they said, he is a leader and he is so perceptive about issues. And they said, you need to do your master's, but you need to go home to Africa and do your master's there. So he came and joined our Master of Arts in Leadership Studies. Bilini Brown Dor. Dor is Nuer, the other major tribe in South Sudan. He was also in this class. Now, Brown had been a bodyguard for Riek Machar, who was the major opposition leader in these tribal conflicts, and he was in charge of the weapons to collect them at the end and put them away. And once in class he said, yeah, sometimes they get mad at me because they say I talk too much. We're very human, isn't it, with our foibles? But his boss eventually became the first vice president of South Sudan. He's in Kenya. These two young men are in the same class from arch-rival tribes. We're in a class called Conflict Transformation and Reconciliation Processes. They look at each other and say, we're in Nairobi. We can get together, we can pull our people together. What can we do to begin the processes of reconciliation? And how can we strategize for rebuilding our country when we can go home? In November, when I was there in Nairobi for graduation, I went out for breakfast with one of the members of my home group from my church there, and suddenly this person appears. It's Brown, and he had heard my voice and had come over. He made me stand up, gave me a hug, and then I said, well, what are you doing now? He said, well, I've come back to do another master's in counseling psychology because I have the leadership, but our people are so traumatized that I need some more skills. So that's what he is doing. This morning and yesterday, Deng was posting photos. He now works with Christian Mission Aid. He's up in Kakuma refugee camp, showing the discipleship trainings they're doing among the South Sudanese there in Kakuma refugee camp, which happens to be like the second largest refugee camp in the world, many South Sudanese. The second story, I'd like to introduce you to a very special friend as well. Faustin Ntamashobora is Rwandan, and his wife Salome, dear friends. Faustin grew up in Rwanda in a large family. His father was a priest in traditional African religion in his culture. He was the child, the son, that was selected to be the successor to his father. So growing up, he went everywhere with his father, learning, the rituals and the traditions. And at the age of 20, he encountered Christ and gave his life to Christ. And he said, but I learned about mentoring and how to raise up other leaders. He became a pastor and was a pastor of a church in Kigali when the Rwandan genocide, took place in 94. His church had both Tutsis and Hutus. He took some of the members in, and they hid under their beds for 6 weeks, and then finally made their way out to Goma in DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo. Eventually, 6 months later, ended up in Nairobi, became part of one of my students in the Master of Arts in Christian Ministries program, and he spoke hardly any English. Can you imagine starting a master's class in a language you don't know very well? And by the end of the 2 years, I actually gave him a paper of mine to edit. Fast forward, he became a leader within some reconciliation ministries based in Kenya, but reaching the Great Lakes region of Africa, Rwanda, Burundi, DRC, Uganda, Kenya. Went and did his doctorate at Biola University, came back. We ended up co-teaching doctoral seminars at both ILU, where I am, and at another university where he was primarily based. And then but his heart and passion, he would only join the faculty if they allowed him 6 months of the year. He needs to do grassroots training. And he goes back, and now he's just full-time in that. It's called Transformational Leadership in Africa. I am privileged to be on his Kenya board. There's a board in Rwanda and DR Congo. They do pastoral training for leadership development, grassroots, and Salome leads women's economic development. When they finish these series of trainings, the trainees, the participants receive a certificate, which is a goat or a cow. So they have to feed their certificates for for the development of the communities. Our latest project, if you will, is we are at the request of those pastors in Rwanda who are now, if anyone is leading a church, they must now have by the government requirement, they must have a certificate or a diploma in theology to try to address some of the many wild things that are also happening. And they came to Faustin and TL Africa and said, we want you to offer this. We want to learn from you. So we are building, the Kenya board is kind of leading the way to help build a university in northern Rwanda for a Bachelor of Theology and a vocational study, either auto mechanics, of which I know nothing, or agriculture, so that they will not only be self-sustainable themselves and their families, but be able to lead the church, can lead the communities in holistic development. The motto for TL Africa is, they're empowering Christian leaders in Africa through holistic transformation programs. And as they say, we are on a mission to raise up servant leaders in Africa. God is at work, and it's about leaders there mentoring and training up the next generation of leaders who lead on to the next generations, that communities can be transformed. As I want to now pass the baton to Gideon Ochieng, also a very dear friend. We've known each other, actually all three of us have known each other all these decades. But I would just add a prayer request. Tomorrow in Kenya, massive demonstrations are being called for by the one who lost the presidential elections year and a half ago. And they're being called, and I just read the news this morning. It says the government will accept peaceful picketing, but will crush violators. Please pray for peaceful demonstrations. That's okay. And our school is very close to State House, so we'll be right in the midst. We're this morning making decisions as whether to tell people to stay home or what. So with that, let me pass the baton to Gideon Ochieng.
Martha, I did not know that it is this Susan Kibe that you're talking about. So we know the same person. I have known Susan for maybe 30 years now. And it is very interesting. That is the same person. Until I saw her picture, I did not know which Susan we were referring to. So what a small world. Yes, so my name is Gideon Ochieng, and I believe I know quite a number of you, and we have interacted. And for the new persons who we haven't met, again, it's just I greet you in the name of Jesus, and all the way from Nairobi, Kenya. And I just wanted to take you on this virtual trip, and my prayer is that one day you actually get to come to a real trip, physically in person, to visit with some of Martha's friends and Francis' friends and community, and really get to meet all these wonderful people in their tough. Martha, we call her Auntie Martha over here, and so she goes by many names while in Kenya, and every time she comes around, we must have a cup of chai, which if she doesn't come for it, then that's a crime, really. I am married to Cecilia, and we have been married for 22 years this year. And we are blessed with 4 children, 2 adults, and then 2 younger ones. Our setting is in different communities across the city, and Martha has just described one of the modes of job or community outreach that we use, and one is actually training. We train leaders, mainly pastors who have been called to serve in the informal settlements. It used to be that you could drive as far as you can to the edge of these communities, and then hobble over railway tracks and and different paths before you get to where you're training. That has changed a little bit, though not very different, but we still have to do the same to get to some places. We carry a lot of our training inside those communities, in churches which are located in those places. There are smaller churches of anywhere between 20 to 60 people. If you get a church of 70, that's a really, really big church in this community. But those communities are really huge. Smaller ones are upwards of 200,000. Bigger ones are 500,000 people and more are staying in one place. So these are the people that and the communities where we serve. We train once a week for the whole year, and these trainings are basically to help our leaders to be equipped in basic theology. And for those who have never had any training or introduction to theology, it's also a step that would lead them to some formal training, which then they can be certified and they can go on as far as they want. If they want to get up to PhD, we're able to help them, carry on. This year we have 83 pastors that are being trained, and by June of this year we'll be graduating those 83 from one particular community. We also do mentorship among the young people, and our mentorship program comes along in the shape of basketball. So we build basketball courts, and then in those basketball courts, we do mentorship, we do discipleship, and we also just train in the basketball, the game of basketball. So I will probably now move on to talk a little bit about a story. under our training program, the training program of pastors. There's one community that we currently are serving in is called Kawangware. And in Kawangware, we have 83 pastors enrolled. They've been meeting for the past half a year, and we will be graduating them soon. And part of our requirement is that they get to work with one another, they get to do some practical training, outreach together, just discovering what their community is and getting their head together to see what they can do jointly. So last December, actually November, getting into December, one of our journeys took us to a place we never knew existed, at least I didn't, which is a gun tough, but also a place where we have a lot of drug abusers. So it's like a drug den. We ended up sort of stumbling in this place by accident. But we discovered that on that particular day, there were over 200 men, women, children, most of them drunk or based on drugs. And our introduction to that was such a surprise. You know, we showed up, a number of pastors, and we thought we were bringing Christ to them, but lo and behold, we met one young man who was, clearly very drunk, but was able to preach, teach, share the words, and eventually pray for us and for themselves and for the country. And for us, it was just like Jesus inviting us to this space that we thought was just left for, the very lost people, the least among this. So that conversation led us to another visit, and this time around in Christmas, we showed up. We had budgeted to feed 250 people. We ended up feeding 300 people. It was a lunch. They had a drink, and after that, we sang and prayed together. Again, one of the most surprising things that happened, out of the 300, a few of them said they want to come to church, but one girl actually made good that promise, and she showed up in church the following Sunday, and she was, dressed up in the decent clothes that she could find. Obviously, you would tell that she doesn't belong, but she showed up with her child, and for that one person, I say, that was a miracle that we went to this place, trying to reach out for people who are lost and without a way, and we found out that one of them was actually willing to come to church. She has continued to come to church to this day, and there's a number of pastors, about 10 of them, who have decided to rally around this community, and so maybe next time you're visiting Nairobi, we'll have a church service happening in the drug den, the place where people shoot drugs, and is quite a dangerous place by every description that you can imagine. Another story that I just wanted to highlight is the story of the basketball court and the mentorship program. As I said, we have been using that as a means of bringing young high schoolers to Christ. The need is huge. Most of them are coming to school, and they need support, psychosocial. They need to be fed. Some of them are orphaned who are raising up themselves, taking themselves to school. During the day, they have to go and do some menial jobs so that they can, fend for themselves. And those jobs are many, including some of them selling their bodies in order to survive. But that is a space where we find ourselves. The entire community probably have 200,000 kids plus going to school. Out of those, we have chosen to work with government schools, 16 of them, and our aim is to build 16 basketball courts, in one in each school. We are currently working on court number 5 and 6, and the launch will be happening in the month of May on the 12th. So if you happen to be around Nairobi, please, you are invited to that beautiful event. Now, the story of this particular court is very interesting. This is a group of kids that we introduced basketball to about 4 years ago. And so last year, some miraculous things happened, after really hard work among these kids, being discipled, being trained, being mentored. They were able to actually, play so well that they were number 2 in Kenya and ended up representing our country at the East African Games. So they were literally ambassadors of hope from Kibera slums, having no skills, basketball skills at the beginning. And it took them 4 years to be national champions. And not only that, they are also a miracle to celebrate because, as you all know, the world was shut during COVID-19. And as a country, we had a crisis where a lot of teenagers got pregnant during that time. Because of our program, I believe, and because of the work that Christ is doing among these kids, none of our girls got pregnant. 66 of them that we were working with in that particular year. And this year, they've actually graduated. They graduated at the end of last year. So most of them have gone on to college or have started some sort of business or are waiting to join other spaces, have gone in as professional basketballers. 2 of them are actually on their way to the US on college scholarship to play basketball. So these are just miraculous stories that, out of our program. And hey, another thing is that the Kenya under 18 girls team is made out of, 7 of the players in that team are actually from our camp, the kids that we've trained and have mentored. It only took 4 years, but they are already occupying the largest number of seats at the national, the under 18 team for girls. So we are truly blessed and glad to be part of this journey. And this could not have been possible without you all journeying with us as a group, as a mission, as brothers and sisters in Christ. And again, as I said, we hope that, God willing, that you'll be able to come and visit. Our interaction with UPC continues to grow in various forms. In the past, we've hosted the world deputies who have come in and served in various capacities, volunteering with us, or we second them to volunteer with other organizations that we partner with. So there are numerous opportunities for you not only to be on this virtual trip, but actually to make it to Nairobi or to other parts of Kenya to be part of the great work that God is doing among his people. And with that, allow me to introduce you to our next speaker, who is my brother Francis Omondi. He is a couple of miles away from where I am today, but we're in the same country. So Francis, please join us on and carry on to the next session.
I'm glad to join you today for this virtual mission. We are in Garissa. Garissa is in the northern part of our country, Kenya, towards the border with Somalia. I'm married to Anne Omondi, and we have 3 boys. That's Jean, Daniel, and Moses. They're all adults now. We got linked to UPC around 1993. This was not unusual kind of connection. I would say long time ago, there lived a mission director at UPC, mission pastor, let me say that, called Art Bills. Art Bills had friends, I think friends of his son, who they had studied with at Seattle Pacific, but was now working as a missionary in Kenya. Kenya for a long time had been a hub of missionaries from the West. And missionaries had taken great pleasure of working here because of the facilities that were available for them and supported them. But in the northern part of Kenya, where the situation was a bit different in terms of climatic conditions, in terms of security, very few worked. And here was an unusual couple that worked in the northern Kenya in a town called Wajir. So Art Bills had come over to visit with him. And on his way back, he was so surprised that that their people were doing so difficult a task, and assumed that there were no Africans working in these areas too. It is true because many people had seen missions as something that was done by Americans or Europeans, people coming from outside and working in Africa. The rest of us were always seen as pastors and never considered in that bracket of missions. So he challenged our board director, who he had known, and asked him, when will Africans ever play their role in missions? And our director told him, no. There are already many who are doing this work, and they've done it for some years now. The challenge they face may only be that one of support, but actually there are people working. So that intrigued Art Bills, and he immediately wanted to link with this group that he'd heard about and wanted to play a role in their work among the unreached peoples, particularly the northern Kenya. That was our beginning. So we corresponded in letters, and he put us in UPC budget. We listened to someone from UPC, and we technically became part of UPC missionaries. And that we did for several years. 10 years on, I felt that you related with us without knowing us very well. The congregation was not connected with us. Neither did you also know what we do, or we didn't know UPC pretty well. And we feared with the changes that were happening in Christianity, we may come up to face you and not be happy to be part of your support. So we discussed and asked whether we should do certain meetings. You visit with us or send people to visit us. This only worked when Ken Caston became then the missions pastor. He visited us and then organized that Anne and I and our sons could come to UPC and be missionaries in residence. This happened in 2004, 2005, where we participated fully in the mission and the liturgy and the services that UPC was doing. So that became our strongest connection. But before that, a group of UPC people coming to Kenya had always made efforts to come and see us. So in this way, we've become really part of you, knowing a number of you, meeting in different places, participating in thinking through together this idea of missions and working with you. We were a little unusual people to participate in missions because Anne and I were developing careers in other fields. But there was a challenge. Most of the places in the north have not been open to mission movement. One was because of the colonial edict that barred missionaries from ever going to the north areas where majority living there were Muslims. Two, period after independence and into the time when we were settling as a country, the people in the north, being Somali, had decided they wanted to secede and join their kindred in Somalia, and not feeling, because they felt they were not part really of feeling affinity with the Kenyans. This led to a lot of sabotage wars, fight with the state, fight with each other. That made the place very volatile. So schools were not built, hospitals were not put up, and majority of the people lived on the edge. So when we came over to begin this work, we realized that we too, with our children, needed schools which we could not get. And so we decided to start one for our own. And this led to another because our neighbors insisted that we can't be so selfish to teach our own children. They wanted theirs also to gain from the improved standards that we were bringing. So that led in 1998 to us setting up one of the first private schools, so we called it, in the region. And this became a model that children started very picking grammar, language, and all very early. They got very qualified teachers who they never heard before. And this became a great bastion. We tell this story because school for us was not a way of converting our Muslim neighbors, but it was providing for them a service they were denied by the circumstances they were in, or the risk that brought very talented and gifted people to come to them. So it was a way of showing love to a neighbor. And this became for us a very strong bridge of meeting, because before this, they had been very hostile and never wanted to give an ear to anything we said about our faith. They thought we are corrupting them. They believed they must resist us violently. So we always were on the run. But once we started this, it gave us a very good foundation of relating. We in Garissa live on an edge of two different, I'll call them counties, so we call them. In one county, the people were left so far behind. Majority of them came as casual workers to the other Somalis and other people. Many of them had no schools. This was now worse than what we had in Garissa. So whenever the government gave a quota for people to be recruited, either to work for government, to be recruited in police force, and or to come as teachers, none qualified, because rarely did we see students going past primary school. A number of them one day came to see Anne in the office, in our office at the school, and asked if we could help. First, a group of 60, they say there were 60 of them who had passed very well at primary school, but there was no secondary for them to go to. We also had a need because they feared that their students coming to our school would be exposed to Christianity, and so they barred them from joining our secondary school. So this gave us an opportunity to fill up spaces that we had. So we gave them opportunities. 4 years on, all of them graduated with good grades. Now there are now many, 60 of them look forward to getting government jobs to improve the standards of their community and all. It's a transforming story that we changed. We saved a number of them from either going as joining the Al-Shabaab or the other movements that are anti-government, or going into drugs. So in this way, we've used school to prevent a danger that was already looming in the society. We are grateful that God gave us opportunity to do this, that in the space of the 20 years we've done, we've seen close to 600 students joining universities across the area, the world. Actually, there's some in Turkey, some in America, South America, and Europe, and even Kenya. A number of them have come back to work for the county. So there's a deep, deep respect that the people have given to us because of this. We are grateful that this was possible. As I said, the areas we work in have been very difficult to live in because of the desert climate and the aridity that we've had. When the country or the region had failure of rains, we were hit hardest. And for the last 4 years, we never got the anticipated rains for the people. So for these years, post-COVID, and during this period, we've had very interesting times that people have gone without food and cattle have died, which has been the main source of a lot of people here, a source of support for a lot of people here. That led us to wonder what would happen. Because of the dangers of insecurity, many NGOs withdrew from working here, and mitigations, the measures to save the situation have not been really been off well. So being here, we've had friends and people in need around us. We then found that we must do something. We are grateful that UPC came handy. And when we made appeal, you, through the Deacon funds and other funds allocated, you gave us resources that we've been able to support a number of families. For the last 4 years, we've supported more than 4,000 families through the famine. And we've made it possible for children to stay in school by providing food for close to 2,000 of them in different schools in the region. We want to carry on doing some of this, and because this is what God calls us to do. When he says, I was hungry and you gave me food. And it's not really the people we know, it's also the people who we'd never have met, the people we share nothing with. But on realizing that they were in need, coming to help them becomes a very strong point. We are grateful for our partnership, which we seek that God would continue to expand this and give us more ways of cooperating and to assist in missions. Our task has not been very smooth because being a missionary in this context of hardship and always running from violence and extremism, have really had a toll on us. Sometimes you wonder whether this is all, whether God has power to stop evil. Because when you see colleagues, when you see friends being taken down by terrorists, you begin to ask, there is no security really for you. The government cannot protect you. You can protect yourself. And so you ask, is it worth it? Should we still be where we are? And you again ask, is this what God really wants done? Can we do it differently? These are some of the dilemmas we find ourselves very often in, and asking that God would protect us. So it's a good point for you to help pray with us and pray for us, or as often as you can remember, that we make always wise decisions as long as the day breaks, that we would know where to turn. God has not freed us yet from the bond of serving him in this region. We've seen converts coming, we've seen some churches planted, but how to strengthen these, how to keep these ones going has become such a thing that we would really covet your prayers and support for. I don't know what gifts you have. I don't know how well you're disposed in this, but it is our invitation that in your prayers, consider visiting, consider being part of what we are doing, and support us in the work that we've been doing in the region for these years. Thank you again. God bless.
Well, thank you all for coming to this mission trip, this virtual mission trip. So you've heard several times that we have an invitation to actually go to Kenya. And I think we're going to try to do this. In the next couple of years, we're going to do a vision trip to Kenya. So if you are interested, please contact me and let me know, okay? So I just want to thank all of our mission partners, and I'd like for all of us to thank them in Swahili. So I'm gonna try to say it, and then you repeat after me, okay? Asante sana. All right, great, thank you. So I just want to tell our mission partners again, the impact made by your ministries is significant and exciting. It's a privilege for UPC to partner with you as you share the gospel message with energy, intelligence, imagination, and love. And we've heard that you face many challenges in your ministry, so I want to remind you that you are not alone, and that we all share in the hope that we have in Jesus.